This video is brought to you by Squarespace. If you need a website or domain, check out squarespace.com. Hey everybody, and welcome to a new video. As a photo educator, I have a problem. It comes in the form of the most commonly asked question that I get, which is, what camera should I buy? So what's the problem? What should be my most asked question is, what lens should I get? That's because the lens choice you make will impact the look of your photo more than the camera, easily. So in this video, I'm going to go over your lens choices to help you pick the right one for you. Stay till the end for my recommendation of if you could only have one lens. My name is Simon D'Entremont and I'm a professional nature and wildlife photographer living in Eastern Canada. I'll make weekly videos giving you photo tips or taking you behind the scenes for nature photography. Subscribe if you want to see more. So choosing the right lens is the greatest determinant of the look, feel, and sharpness of your photos. Portraits, wildlife, or landscapes, the lens will determine the character of your shot. The proof? Ask any professional photographer what they would take if they could only take one piece of gear out of their burning car. There's a 95% chance they'll pick a lens, not a camera. By the way, if you don't yet understand the terms used in lens talk, like primes versus zooms or focal lengths and apertures, I have a whole video on that. Go have a look, which you can see right here, as I won't be repeating it all, but make sure you come back. Also note that I'll be talking full frame equivalents for focal lengths. So for crop sensors, the focal lengths of the lenses I'll be discussing need to be multiplied by 1.5 to be equal, and doubled for micro four thirds. So if I say 50 millimeters is good for something on a full frame, you'd get a 35 millimeter lens on a crop sensor camera, or 25 millimeters on a micro four thirds. So let's get into what you need to consider when getting lenses. First, we need to pick focal lengths. The main question here is, what subject are you shooting? The size and relative distance of your subject will hugely impact the focal lengths that you need. Starting with really wide, if you shoot indoors in cramped spaces like indoor architecture or real estate, or want to shoot wide panoramic views of places like stadiums, you want very short focal lengths, like 10 millimeters or 15 millimeters, which give you a wide field of view, like a 10 to 18 millimeter lens, or this 14 to 35, which is pretty wide at 14. Between 15 millimeters and 35 millimeters are common focal lengths to shoot wide views, but not extreme. Good for landscapes and architecture. That's why a 14 to 35 or 17 to 40 lens like these are two common choices for landscape photographers, or like these 16 millimeter prime lens. You can also shoot full body portraits with lenses like this 35 millimeter. Between 35 millimeters and 75 millimeters are variations of what your regular field of view is for your own eyesight, which many folks would suggest is around 50 millimeters or so. What types of targets would you shoot at those focal lengths? Portrait full body shots, or even tighter like waist up shots, landscapes, pets up close, car interiors and exterior close-ups, and street photography. The classic 24 to 70 zoom is great for this range, like this one. As is the nifty 50, the 50 millimeter f1.8. Between 75 millimeters and 200 millimeters are great for portrait close-ups like headshots, and 85 and 135 millimeter primes are famous for this. Landscape highlights of distant features can also be caught with this, but I wouldn't get this focal length if it was your only landscape lens. More of a bonus opportunity. The 70 to 200 zoom is a staple here. Pets on the move, sports in close quarters like hockey or close to the net and basketball are great at these focal lengths. Equestrian or other sports action too, when you're not too far away. And finally, over 200 millimeters, you're into wildlife and sports, where you can't zoom with your feet. 100 to 400 like this one, or this monster at 600 millimeter primes are mainstays here. 100 to 400 is great for mammals, which are bigger in the frame, and sports at a distance like soccer or football. 600 to 800 millimeters are great for small birds. I get asked all the time if a 70 to 200 or a 50 to 250 millimeters is enough for wildlife. Not really, unfortunately, unless you have a very small sensor camera like a micro four thirds. I recommend at least 400 millimeters for wildlife. Note that you can cheat these focal lengths by getting really up close. You wouldn't think a 24 to 70 is a wildlife lens, but if you're close enough, it can be. Now, the most under-discussed criteria for selecting lenses when it comes to focal lengths, and one I want to raise, is what is your photographic style? It's that some people want to shoot their subjects up close, like tight portraits. Others want to include more environment. To include that more environment, you either need to back up or shoot wider with a shorter focal length. So if 85mm fills the frame with your model, but you want to include some environment, maybe you want a 50mm or even a 35mm instead. If you get tight portraits of wildlife at 600mm, but you want to include more of the scene, maybe you should get a 400mm instead. The next issue is what's your budget. There is undoubtedly a link between price and things like build quality, sharpness, and apertures available. In short, weather sealed, super sharp, image stabilized, fast lenses are expensive. So money doesn't grow on trees, so coming up with the money to buy expensive lenses can be tough. Here are a few tips to how best to think about this. First, spending a bit less on the camera and a bit more on the lens is actually a great strategy. As is buying a camera without a kit lens and buying good glass to put on it separately. Kit lenses aren't often the best, as manufacturers want to keep the cost of the camera down. So buy the camera without a lens and get a better lens for it on the side. That's always what I do. 2, you need to figure out quantity versus quality. Do you want to buy 4 cheap lenses to have more focal lengths available but take lesser quality images? Or buy 1 or 2 spectacular lenses which will give you fewer but better photos? Personally, I'd take that deal and buy 2 great lenses over 4 cheap ones. And third, cameras come and go and the technology changes quickly. As such, they depreciate quickly. But lens technology changes slowly, so they depreciate slowly. I bought a camera once for $5,500 and sold it 4 years later for $2,200, $825 per year. But I also bought a lens for $11,000, used it 7 years, and sold it for $8,000. That's $428 per year, half the annual life cycle cost of the camera, even if it costs twice as much. While not investments, they're the wiser place financially to spend a larger part of your budget in the long run. I recommend spending more on lenses than the camera. I'd like to thank the sponsor of this video, Squarespace. If you haven't heard of them, they're an all-in-one website platform that helps you create your website from scratch, just like I did. You don't need any coding experience or even be tech savvy. They have lots of templates to choose from to make it easy to get your own website up and running in no time. Even though they have great templates, like ones for photography that I do, for example, the place to go now is to use their new Design Intelligence feature, using both Squarespace's experience and cutting-edge AI, helping you to tailor your own website to your own specific needs. It looks really professional to have your own online galleries for your products or services and your own domain. And a website is also a great way to monetize your work by setting up an online store using Squarespace payments, which you can set up with just a few clicks. You can even do buy now and pay later with options like Afterpay. Go to squarespace.com to sign up for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/Simon for 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. The third big question is zoom versus prime. Primes are often faster, that is larger apertures, with better image quality, but they aren't very flexible. As to change the size of the subject or compose differently, you need to zoom with your feet, as we say. But they can provide a very unique look and amazing image quality. Zooms, on the other hand, are more flexible, allowing you multiple options for subject size and framing in one lens. The trade-off is that usually they come with narrower apertures than primes, and zoom lenses often come with trade-offs because they need to work at both shorter and longer focal lengths, so they can be less sharp and have more optical imperfections. This is an oversimplification, but zooms will sometimes get you more shots, and primes more unique looking shots, but fewer of them. With primes, you may miss opportunities because the subject size isn't right for the lens that you have, and you may have to swap lenses to get the shot that you want. Also, switching lenses is a pain, and you may need 2 or 3 prime lenses to do what one zoom can do, which is expensive. So at a wedding ceremony where you're running and gunning, do you want to have 1 zoom on a camera, or do you need 2 cameras for 2 prime lenses? That's often what happens for live event shooters who use multiple primes. And what if you're swapping lenses in a dusty environment like a desert? Zooms are clearly less work and more convenient. What are the mainstay zooms? The ones that go by the name of the Holy Trinity are the 3 that most aspire to get. something in the 14 or 15 to 35 range, the 24 to 70, and the 70 to 200. Outside of wildlife and long-distance sports, these cover 90% of what a photographer needs. What are the lusted over primes? The 35mm f1.4 or f1.8 are great for wide environmental portraits. The 50mm f1.4 or f1.8 primes are very good, and the f1.8, called the Nifty 50, is accessible price-wise. The 85 and 135 fast primes are coveted for portraits. And of course, the 400mm f2.8, 500 and 600 f4 primes are coveted for wildlife, but many of these come at twice the price of zooms. My advice, start with zooms, as they're the most affordable and flexible until you know for sure what you want. That's because primes are expensive, and I don't recommend you spend a lot of money on them until you're really certain what you want or need. Now, how do you know then what primes you need? Here's a trick. If you use Lightroom, in library mode, click here to show a grid and select a filter by exposure info to see what focal lengths you use the most. So get zooms to figure out what you want to photograph and your style, then get primes once you have that nailed down with certainty for your favorite focal lengths before you go spending too much money. The next big decision point, low light or daylight. This basically helps you decide what maximum aperture you need. Low light means that you need fast lenses, that is, lenses with large apertures, to gather more light. In zooms, f2.8 is considered a fast lens, like this 70 to 200 f2.8. For primes, you can get them even faster, like f1.4 or f1.8. For wedding photographers shooting dark receptions or in dark churches, nighttime street photography, or music concerts or dark gyms, fast lenses are almost a must. f2.8 when you're using zooms is the aperture of choice for these situations for professional work. Some manufacturers are even making f2 zooms now. But for low light and movement at the same time, like a rock concert, primes are coveted for their fast apertures. So if you want primes, f1.8 or even 1.4 is considered the best for these situations. But f2.8 at least is recommended. Take note that some lenses come with image stabilization. This is a great feature to have in any situation, but especially in dark conditions, allowing you to use faster shutter speeds in low light. It also improves image sharpness as long as your subjects aren't moving. Almost all longer lenses come with image stabilization these days, but only some of the wider angle short focal lengths do, so keep an eye out for that. Now, related to this aperture discussion is the question, what depth of field do you want? If you want soft, blurry backgrounds, large apertures like f2.8 are what you want. Even f2 or f1.8 or even f1.4. These are very popular in portraiture to make your subject stand out. A 50mm f1.4 or 85mm f1.8. The smaller the number, the better if a blurry background is what you want. f2.8 at least. For long telephotos like my 600mm, f4 is the fastest available, and we make the background as smooth as silk. Note that faster apertures are usually more expensive than smaller aperture equivalents. But there are some genres where deep depth of field is better or more common, like landscapes. This leads to an opportunity. While this lens, my Canon f14 to 35, is available in f2.8 guise as a similar 15 to 35, I bought the f4 version. I wasn't planning on shooting it at f2.8 much, as I will be primarily using it for vlogging and shooting landscapes, for which a thin depth of field isn't important for me, and this version is cheaper and lighter for hiking and travel. But I did buy the f2.8 version of this 24 to 70 as I do plan to use its f2.8 capability. So if you don't plan to use the f2.8 ability of a lens and plan to shoot it at f8 all day, let's say, for landscapes, see if your preferred focal length is available in a smaller aperture. You'll save some bucks and some weight, like a 70 to 200 f4 rather than this f2.8 version. It's half the price and lighter. And here are a few short snappers for special genres. If you like macro photography, the feature you're looking for is a close minimum focus distance. That way you get more magnification. This 35mm f1.8 macro can give you shots like this. An interesting twist on this is that getting a long lens with a short minimum focal distance can work. This Canon EF 100 to 400mm version 2 can actually focus at 400mm down to 3 feet or 1 meter, giving it the highest magnification of Canon's non-macro lenses. Maybe not enough for small bugs, but great for frogs and butterflies. Another special case is Milky Way photography, unless you're using a tracker. You want lenses that are both fast and wide, so 14mm f2.8 or 16mm f2.8 or 24mm f1.8. The 24mm end of a 24-70 f2.8 can also work, but avoid f3.5, f4, or anything longer than 30mm. And I promised you a bonus tip at the end. The if I could only have one lens. Now this is granted dangerous advice as everyone is different, but if I had to give a recommendation as to the most versatile lens that would cover the most genres, styles, and subjects for the average person, it's the 24-70, and if you can afford it, in f2.8 guise. You can shoot portraits, landscapes, street, the Milky Way, music concerts, architecture, weddings, family outings, real estate, amongst others. Other than wildlife and sports, it can do it all. If you thought this video was deserving, give it a like and YouTube will show it to even more photographers looking to make the right lens choice. And I hope that you can use these tips to go out in your next outing and take your own unique and amazing photos. I know you can do it.